What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News. I'm your host, Emma Lingan. I am joined today by Augello and Kelsey Surmacz of the Hockey News, coming at you as we do every Tuesday and Thursday to talk about the latest and greatest storylines around the NHL in bite-sized portions. But before we get into all of that today, because we got a lot to talk about, do want to remind you that for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. All right, guys, we got to get it started with the star of the week here. Nathan MacKinnon became the first player this season to reach 50 goals. Just note the absence of gasps there. I think that is something that a lot of us expected. But still, no less impressive. Of course, MacKinnon is now in his second 50 goal campaign of his career. He became the third player in Colorado/Quebec history to notch multiple 50 goal seasons. He joins Joe Sakic, who did it twice, and Michel Goulet, excuse me. So they did it in both Hall of Famers, I think. Actually, both of those guys are Hall of Famers. So good company to be in for MacKinnon. I mean, Mike, now obviously Colorado, they're just barreling towards the playoffs right now. They're going to be without Cale Makar for a little bit with his injury. How much is Nathan MacKinnon? I mean, we know he's the MVP of this team, but how much is he going to really be integral to their success down the stretch here?
Well, he's essential to their success. And you mentioned Goulet, and you mentioned, I'm sorry, you mentioned Goulet. Who was the other?
Joe Sakic.
Joe Sakic. Thank you. No, I'm getting old. But anyway, they're Hall of Famers, and I think Nathan MacKinnon's a Hall of Famer. No doubt in my mind. He's got 417 career goals, on his way to 500. He's already got a Stanley Cup. He's a perennial MVP candidate. He may not win it this year because Kucherov could supersede him, but he's having a fantastic year. And if and when Makar comes back, I think they're probably the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. So, I mean, they lost 8-6 to Vancouver last night. You think that the Avalanche are like looking forward to the playoffs? I mean, I think they're pretty home and cooled out when it comes to top spot in the Central Division. I think they want the middle of April to get here right away. And I think if they're going to win a Stanley Cup, Nathan MacKinnon's going to be 1A or 1B in terms of the reason why they do it.
Yeah, Kelsey, what do you make of what MacKinnon's been able to do this year? Obviously, player of his caliber, we've come to the point where we're not necessarily surprised when he does something like this anymore, but still no less impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because Nathan MacKinnon's been a superstar for years and years and years in this league, and somehow I still feel like he falls under the radar sometimes in terms of best player in the league discussions and just all around best player in the league, because this is his second 50 goal season. I mean, he's been one of the best all around players in the league, if not the best all around player in the league for years. So this is just a really impressive campaign from him all around. I agree with Mike. He's obviously going to be the integral part of that Colorado Avalanche playoff run. And they've just been a machine this season. He's a huge reason why. He's always a huge reason why. And he just continues to build on this reputation he has of being a solid two-way player. Lots of speed, obviously, but everything he does is everything he touches is turning to gold right now. So just phenomenal year from him once again. And again, I think that I would argue he's the best all-around player in the league.
Well, like we said, future Hall of Famer for sure in Nathan MacKinnon. Another future Hall of Famer, I think, right now in this league is Steven Stamkos. So I want to talk about him for a minute because since December 11th, only Cole Caulfield and Zach Hyman have scored more goals than Stamkos has. He has 28 in his last 45 games with the Nashville Predators. Of course, Stamkos, really down year for him in 2024-25. The Predators as a whole had a down year. It was his first year playing outside of Tampa, so seems to have rebounded quite nicely from that. But Mike, when you look at this season's production from Stamkos, has it changed your opinion about him and about his future with the Predators as a high-end scorer in this league? Because with the Predators, it was looking like things were trending and still maybe could be trending towards him potentially getting traded because it looked like maybe it wasn't a good fit. But what do you think about what this means for his future?
I mean, on previous episodes of the Wraparound, if I had $1 for every time we talked about Stamkos and him being traded, I could go and enjoy a nice steak at a steakhouse around here. I mean, I'm as stunned as everybody that he's rebounded, because at the point that all these rumors were happening, they're like, well, maybe Nashville's gonna have to retain salary for the remaining term of this deal to get this deal done, or maybe they can dump his salary now. If they still want to move him, a lot of teams are going to be interested in a 36-goal scorer. Now, he is 35 years old, and the remaining term on the deal, could signal him just dropping off. But he seems to defy logic. I mean, he is having a fantastic year, and we know his pedigree as a goal scorer. So if the Preds decide they're going to move off of him, I don't think it's going to be as difficult as a task as it would have been earlier in the year.
Keeping in mind that Stamkos, of course, does still have move protection on his contract, so he would have to sign off on a potential trade. But, Kelsey, it was looking at first like Stamkos getting traded was almost a foregone conclusion. Now it's looking like he, like I said, has really rebounded here. So again, at his age, at this stage in his career, we already know he's a future Hall of Famer based on what he accomplished with Tampa. So what do you think this does kind of for his reputation and his future in Nashville?
Well, obviously, I mean, this is a guy that started the season with 1 goal in 14 games, 2 points in 14 games. And it's crazy that he's flipped the script to the extent that he has this season. And that's all credit to him. And it's also, one of those things where we don't know what's going to be happening with the Nashville Predators this summer, what direction they're going to decide to take, what direction management's going to decide to take here. He still does have 2 years remaining at $8 million. So, I mean, I think this is a situation. I think the trade rumors are still going to be surrounding him no matter what, because he is an ideal trade candidate, 36 years old. Nashville isn't getting any younger by keeping him there, and they have some young players they probably want to start working into the fold. But, I mean, they're in the playoff conversation now, so it's going to be really interesting just to see how they approach the summer. But in terms of his reputation in Nashville, I mean, it's hard to kind of rebound from the start that he had, especially at his age. But the fact that we're having this conversation now, the fact that he has 36 goals this season after that start, I think he's done more than enough for himself to kind of secure that reputation in Nashville, and also, as Mike said earlier, just up his trade value and make it a little bit easier for them to work around whatever they decide to do with him.
Yeah, definitely impressive for him, and a big part of the reason why, like you said, Nashville finds themselves in the playoff race in the West right now, right outside of that wild card picture, with a big game against the LA Kings coming up tonight. So interesting and certainly impressive to see what's happened with Stamkos there. Interestingly, another player who started with a new team this year versus Stamkos, who did it last year, but coming this year and looked like he was off to a rough start, is Nick Ehlers. He came, of course, from Winnipeg, now with the Carolina Hurricanes after signing in free agency. Rough start to the year. Since January 1st, though, he has 16 goals and 38 points in 35 games. So he's really turned things around. It looks like puts him behind only Andrei Svechnikov in scoring for the Hurricanes during that span. What makes it even more impressive, I think, is that Ehlers is playing on the team's third line while he's doing this. He's playing with Jordan Staal and Jordan Martinook, and Svechnikov, mind you, is playing with Seth Jarvis and Sebastian Aho up top. So, really impressive that they're able to put up similar numbers given their workload and their playing time here. So, Mike, it's still early. It's still his first year with his new team. But do you think Ehlers has lived up to expectations with the Hurricanes? I think if we afford him maybe that slow start, that adjustment period, and how would you assess the signing for Carolina just as the first year of his contract is coming to an end?
If you look at his stats right now, it's sort of wash, rinse, repeat for him, because in 9 of the last 10 years, he has scored anywhere from 21 to 29 goals. This year he has 24. This year he has 64 points. Last year he had 63. He's just remarkably consistent. I don't think you're ever going to get an 80 to 85 point season, but you're always going to get 25 goals. You're always going to get 60 points. They didn't end up paying him a ton of money comparatively as a free agent. He's making good money, but he's not making top end money. And I think they're getting what they're asking for. And after Mikko Rantanen really didn't fit into them with them after the trade from Colorado to Carolina, getting somebody who I think chose to be there and him performing at a certain level is probably very refreshing and a sigh of relief for Eric Tulsky and the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point with his consistency and his reliability and how much that is valued, especially in the bottom six. I mean, this is a team with lofty playoff aspirations. They've been right there in that mix for these last few years. So, Kelsey, what do you think that Ehlers has done, to help this team, this Hurricanes team, that do you think it was enough to maybe put them over the edge in the playoff conversation? And what do you think of the signing for them overall?
Well, I think in terms of the signing, you mentioned it was a sigh of relief for Tulsky. I mean, how many guys have kind of come to Carolina and then left, or they thought they had their guy? You think of Jake Gensel a couple of years ago. This was kind of them buying a little lower on a player that they could bet on, that consistency, and he's definitely delivered this season. But I think more than anything, the fact that he's on the third line and putting up this production, he's kind of the trigger man on that line. They have a go-to guy there. They can put the puck in the back of the net, and that makes them a more dangerous four-line team. They have more scoring depth than they've had in previous years. So I think just that aspect of it makes Carolina a more dangerous team because they're able to roll those four lines and have that threat on the third line. So I just think more than anything, he gives them options. He gives them options for their lineup. He can move up and down the lineup. But it just makes them a more dangerous team because the matchup nightmares for other teams are just ongoing because he's on that third line. And you mentioned it. I mean, the fact that he's on that third line with Stahl and just kind of putting up similar numbers to Svechnikov, who's playing on that first line, says a lot about who he is as a player and also just about how much he's thriving on that team and in that system. So it's awesome to see him doing well there. And it's been great for the Canes because, like I said, it just gives them more and more depth. And it's something that's going to make them more dangerous in the playoffs this season.
Absolutely. Want to talk about another team that is in that playoff picture for the East right now. That is Boston, the Bruins, now currently occupying that first wild card spot in the East. And Charlie McAvoy deserves a lot of credit for that. He's been crucial to their success this season. He's got 37 points in 33 games during the 2026 calendar year. He started out the season with 19 points in 28 games. So only 3 defensemen in the NHL have more points during that span. And those defensemen are Evan Bouchard with 49, Quinn Hughes with 42, and Rasmus Dahlin with 39. So really good company to be in there. Those are, of course, all known as offensive defensemen, really known for their offensive production. So McAvoy has been right in that same conversation with those players. Mike, do you think that he has the skills and the opportunity to really break through in a crowded field of high-end defensemen and ever be considered for a Norris Trophy? Now, I'm not talking this year because I think the field is pretty much set there, but just if McAvoy can put together another couple of seasons like this, do you think it's possible he could be in that conversation?
I think he can. I mean, he's sort of on that second level with Adam Fox, even though Adam Fox won a Norris. Adam Fox, Miro Heiskanen, now maybe you put Lane Hudson in there as an offensive performer. Evan Bouchard, although Evan Bouchard should never win the Norris because he can't play defense. But it's tough to break through the top 3 this year into Werenski, Quinn Hughes, and Cale Makar. And I think eventually McAvoy could be a top 3 finalist. You got to remember, in terms of his value to that team, Boston was in a playoff spot when he got hurt at the Four Nations. Everything went downhill after he got hurt, and then they ended up trading everybody except Pasternak and him at the deadline. Now they're a playoff team, or at least they're in the mix for the playoffs. And I think his consistency, and he plays over 24 minutes a night, is one of the main reasons. Boston was in Buffalo recently, playing second of back-to-back. He probably logged 25 minutes that night in a back-to-back game where they absolutely had to win against a tough Sabres team, and they won that game in overtime. So if they make the playoffs, it's probably because Charlie McAvoy is their most valuable or second most valuable player.
And he hasn't had it easy either. I don't know that I've ever seen any one individual player take as many pucks and sticks to the face as Charlie McAvoy has. So all the more impressive to do what he's done. Kelsey, what do you make of what he's done for the Bruins? His value to the team, like Mike talked about, but also, do you see him ever being in the Norris conversation?
I mean, he could be in the conversation. I mean, he is having a career best offensive season this year, and that's counting missing a lot of time, or at least a handful of games here. So, I mean, I think he could be in that discussion, but it's going to be hard for him to be a legitimate contender to win it with guys like Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, and the emergence of Lane Hudson, some of these other guys in the league. I mean, I just think the field is way too crowded for him to probably ever win one, and unless he continues to elevate his offensive game. Because another thing to keep in mind with the Norris Trophy, I mean, I think you could argue hands down, maybe next to Erik Karlsson, that he's been the most valuable player for his team this year. And the Norris Trophy, in a sense, is kind of supposed to represent that, I feel like, on the blue line. But, I mean, in recent years and just what the awards become, it's kind of like an offensive defenseman kind of award nowadays. Most of the time when you have a defenseman having a standout offensive year, regardless of defensive stats, it's kind of given to the guy that's the loudest, I suppose. But McAvoy just does so many things to help this team win. He's such a great all-around blue liner. And I don't think necessarily when you're thinking of these conversations that he gets enough credit for the all-around defenseman that he is. So I think he should be in conversations, but as far as him winning it, I'm not sure I can see that with those other guys in the league.
Well, regardless, McAvoy's still a really, really critical part of the Bruins being currently a playoff team if the season were to end today. Another player who more recently I think is kind of broken out with the Bruins is Pavel Zacha. He was named the NHL's third star of the month in March. He had a a league best 13 goals in 16 games during the month of March. So Zacha is having a career best season, that month of March being a big part of that. He has 28 goals and 60 points in 72 games for Boston this year. And he has one more year on his contract after this season. And he has a just under $5 million cap hit. He's at 4.75. So Mike, do you see Zacha as a long-term fit for Boston just based on what he's been able to do here, especially this year? And looking at what he's making right now, I mean, what do you imagine that next contract is going to look like?
Well, they better back up the Brinks truck. I mean, because when they got him from New Jersey, he was playing wing most of the time with the Devils, and the Bruins have played him predominantly at center. But I saw him; he scored the game-winning goal that Bruins Sabres game that I referenced earlier in overtime. But the interesting thing about Zacha is he hasn't been playing a lot with David Pastrnak. Last year, he was playing primarily with him. Now they've moved Fraser Minton, who's not a number one center, but they've moved him on the line with Pastrnak, and they've moved Zacha down to second line center. Still getting power play time. He's got 10 power play goals. I mean, they're getting great bang for the buck there in terms of his salary and what he's doing, and they're going to have to pay him. Now it's a question of whether they think he's a long-term solution. They may have a pick in the top 10 this year or top 6 or 7, depending on where the Maple Leafs have given them a high first-round pick, and that could be a center, and that could be somebody who's the future. But right now, along with Minton and Elias Lindholm, is Pavel Zacha up the middle for the Bruins.
And it's interesting because we talked about when we were talking about McAvoy and how his absence after the Four Nations kind of turned the Bruins into sellers at the deadline. They sold everyone away, and it looked like, well, they're starting from scratch, although you can't really ever do that when you have David Pastrnak on your team. But still, I mean, what they've been able to do with these players like Zacha who have sort of emerged and broken out. I mean, Kelsey, what do you think he could maybe command in his next contract? Do you think the Bruins are even going to be able to afford to keep him?
Yeah, I think I've said this almost every single time I've been on here, but I think this is, again, uncharted territory for some of these GMs, just trying to figure out what contracts are going to be looking like with the salary cap rising at the rate that it is, and it's projected to rise even more past what we already know. So it's interesting because, centers tend to have more value in this league, and now that he's predominantly playing as a center, I think that's only going to increase his value. It's going to only increase his ability to demand more. And I mean, the production speaks for itself. He uses his size. He's great around the net. This is kind of like a hybrid power forward that the Bruins have for them this season. And those guys are rare finds in this league. He's having a great year. So, I mean, I think he could command upwards of probably what around Ehlers is making, around 8.5. So, I mean, we'll see how that shakes out and how these contracts continue to shake out, as we go year by year with the salary cap rising. But I think he can command up in that range, because if he's going to be this team's solution at second line center, at least for the foreseeable next few years, I think that he has all the capability to command that because of his performance this season and just his role on this team. He's played an integral role in this team's success. And again, just his positional versatility, I think, increases his value. So I'm curious to see how high he can command salary this summer, because it's going to be pretty interesting.
Well, and like you said, with the cap going up too, I mean, 8.5, that is probably about the starting point or about the going rate for a second line center in this league now, especially a really solid, reliable one like him. So, like you said, will be very interesting to see. Zacha, of course, having a great year with Boston. But if we're talking about players who have had really good years, Kelsey, we got to talk about Erik Karlsson in Pittsburgh. He was second in scoring last month. He had 24 points, 9 goals, 15 assists in 17 games. He put up just 2 points less than Nikita Kucherov did during the month of March. Mind you, Karlsson is a defenseman, in case we needed reminding of that. Kelsey, what do you make of the timing of Karlsson's scoring surge, and how much will having, scoring from the blue line help the Penguins in the playoffs? Because this is a player that we've talked about before, that he has been, I think you've even argued that he is the Penguins' most valuable player this season. So having that scoring from the blue line is going to be helpful. But if you look at Karlsson and anyone else with the Penguins who you think is going to be critical to get scoring from in particular down the stretch here?
Well, first of all, just with the season that Erik Karlsson's having, you gotta wonder what was going on with Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh the last couple of years, because he is a completely different player than he was the first 2 years in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's not just the offense. You said it. I mean, he was putting up elite forward level production in March as a defenseman, while also playing critical minutes for the Penguins on the penalty kill, on the power play. He's playing outstanding defensive hockey, especially in this last stretch. And he was basically carrying an injured Penguins team on his back. Sidney Crosby played only 5.5 or 6.5 games in the month of March. Evgeny Malkin only played 9 games in the month of March. I mean, this team was depleted, and he put it on his back. Quite frankly, I'm kind of surprised that Kucherov got the nod over him. It's kind of hard to dismiss a guy who's scoring at almost a 2-point per game pace. But Erik Karlsson was putting up similar numbers as a defenseman last month, and he's been absolutely crucial for the Penguins this season. Hands down their MVP, because I don't think they get through that March stretch without him. They had the highest difficulty of schedule in the National Hockey League in March, and they were able to get through it 8-6-3. And they're still in second place in the Metro. They actually created more separation than when they started the month of March. They're 6 points over that playoff Mendoza line. So He's been a huge part of their success. I think Anthony Mantha has as well. He just registered his first career 30-goal season, which this is after a season when he had ACL surgery last year, played only 14 games for the Calgary Flames. And he's come back and had a career year for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's going to command a ton in free agency this year. Someone's going to pay him, whether that's the Penguins, whether that's somebody else. But I think Mantha, Karlsson, Raquel stepped up, Russ stepped up, Igor Chinakov's been fantastic for Pittsburgh. But Karlsson's been driving the bus all season. He drove the bus in March. And I think if the Penguins are going to go anywhere in the playoffs, they're really going to be counting on him to drive offense from the blue line and continue to play at the level that he has been all season. This is some of the best hockey I've ever seen Erik Karlsson play.
Yeah, and like you said, he's really been doing it all year, but especially in this recent surge through the month of March. I mean, Mike, how critical do you think Karlsson is to the Penguins, not just their playoff hopes, but their hopes of actually making a deep run in the playoffs?
Well, any team with Sidney Crosby and Malkin, has the opportunity and the possibility of making a deep run. But now you have to add Karlsson to that mix. I mean, I think the responsibilities that he has had to take out on his shoulders with the decline of Chris Letang, who, he only has 3 goals this season, and Letang is a Hall of Famer, but he's not that player anymore. And, Karlsson, defense has never been his strong suit. This is a guy who had 101 points with San Jose and was a minus 26. So, that tells you something. It's like, oh, great, you scored 100 points. You just gave up 127. It's like, but he's a great player. And I'm a little surprised that he's been as sort of responsible defensively as he has been, as Kelsey has indicated. But I think with the system that Dan Muse has put in, it's benefited him a lot. And, they won 2 games this week that were necessary for them to, create a little space for their race for a playoff spot. Now I think they're probably getting in.
Yeah, really remarkable what the Penguins have been able to accomplish this season under first-year head coach Dan Muse. I would imagine has to be in the Jack Adams conversation, at least as a finalist for what he's been able to do in Pittsburgh this year. On the other side of the state of Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia Flyers did announce today that they have agreed to terms with defenseman David Jiricek on a 2-year contract extension, average annual value of just $1.5 million. So Jiricek, of course, was drafted 6th overall back in 2022. He still, though, has yet to really stick in the NHL, hasn't really found his footing. He has had time with the Blue Jackets, the Wild. Now he's with the Flyers. Mike, do you think that Jiricek will finally be able to find some consistency in Philly now that he has this contract extension? And what do you think is going to need to go right for him?
Well, I mean, he really never found his way with Columbus and Minnesota. I mean, after, they have Brock Faber and they have Quinn Hughes, so they're really stocked up on the blue line, and, they have some veterans like Spurgeon and Brodin. So I don't think he was ever going to get into the lineup in Minnesota, and Minnesota needed forward depth, so they flipped him for Bobby Brink. I mean, he's scoring at a point per game pace with Lehigh, and I think they see, this is a 22-year-old defenseman. He's a right-hand shot. Those are tough players to get. They're betting on him. He probably is in the NHL next season for them. I don't think they're expecting him to be a top pairing guy or a top 4 guy. Maybe, he moves up when the Rasmus Ristolainen's contract expires at the end of next year. But I think they see, a young defenseman who they've gotten under a short-term deal at reasonable money, and they're betting on him. And I think it's a good bet. I mean, I don't think they're expecting him to be Quinn Hughes, but I think they're expecting him just to be a solid defenseman who's got size, and he's 6'4". And we'll see. I mean, I think it's a smart move by Danny Briere to get him, and he could pan out to be a valuable player down the line.
You make a good point with Ristolainen too. He was a guy who a lot of people were expecting to be traded at the deadline, and then he wasn't. So could very well be moving on after next year from him. Kelsey, what do you think of the contract? I mean, it seems pretty cost effective for them, seems pretty low risk, but what do you think Jiricek will need in order to find that consistency that has eluded him so far in his NHL career?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think he needs to stay healthy. That's been one of the issues throughout his young career so far. But I mean, just in general, I think he just needs to play simple and simplify things, not try to do too much. I mean, this is Philadelphia taking a chance on a guy who hasn't really found his footing yet. And I mean, they can afford to take this gamble. And I think Philadelphia needs to take these kinds of gambles, especially on their blue line. They have some talent up front. They have some young talent up front. They could use a little bit more of that on their blue line. So I think this is a really low risk, possibly high reward situation for them. I don't think he has to have the pressure of, as Mike said, maybe playing top four, top pairing or anything. I think he'll have a little bit of room to try to work his game out in a, more sheltered minutes, maybe a bottom pairing role for a little bit and possibly elevate, if he can find some consistency. So I just think as long as he simplifies things, sticks true to his game, stays healthy, this could be a situation where he could earn more playing time. And there's no harm, no foul to Philadelphia. The cap is low enough. This is them giving a guy a chance who really needs one here. So makes the most of it. He could become a part of that blue line in their future because, as I said, they just need more young guys on that blue line, just more young talent in general. Nothing wrong with throwing something at the wall and seeing if it sticks.
Absolutely. And that was kind of a look at the week that was here in the NHL, down the final stretch of games here as we head towards the playoffs. Still a lot of very meaningful hockey games coming up here, including, Mike, one in your neck of the woods between the Buffalo Sabres and the Tampa Bay Lightning. What can we expect from that atmosphere on Monday?
Well, there are going to be two games that Tampa Bay and Buffalo play in between that key matchup next Monday. And right now, Buffalo is leading by 2 points. Tampa has a game in hand. My personal opinion is I think whoever wins that game ends up winning the Atlantic Division. Tampa's got 2 games at home. Buffalo's got 2 games on the road. But it hasn't seemed to matter for Buffalo recently because they've just been incredibly hot. But I don't think we're going to see the game that we saw last month where I think Tampa was more interested in sending a message than they were winning the game. I don't think they're going to play Jonas Johansson. They think they're going to play Andrei Vasilevsky. I think it's going to be all hands on deck. Sometimes I don't know whether John Cooper thinks that it's important to win the division, but I can't see why he wouldn't want to win the division if they're all at all capable. So I'm expecting a raucous affair. I'm sure there will be a few fights, but I think one of the interesting things to see is that in the last few games, Lindy Ruff has drifted towards Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen as the number one goalie. He started a couple games in a row. He had been using Alex Lyon and him as a goalie rotation. If he continues to do that, then I think we know who the game one starter in the playoffs will be. So it will be extremely exciting, and I can't wait to see it.
Very exciting indeed. Exciting times in the NHL right now. If you want to read more about that upcoming game between Tampa and Buffalo or any of the players, topics, teams, playoff races that we have talked about today, of course, head over to the Hockey News. It's been the go-to for all things hockey since 1947. 12 issues packed with game and player insights, plus a free issue to start. It's a must-have for any fan. Head to thn.com/free and grab your subscription today. That is going to do it for today's episode of the Wraparound. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in and listening to us talking some hockey. We really do appreciate it. We will be back with an all new episode next Tuesday. But in the meantime, for Michael Augello and Kelsey Surmacz, I'm Emma Lingan, and we will see you next time.